Hey, it's Des.
Hey, it's MJ,
And
and
we're
we're
your
your
North
North
Carolina
Carolina
Realtors.
Realtors. All right, today we are going to take you along for a home inspection.
Yep, it's home inspection day for our client. So let's go talk about the things that you need to be thinking about if you're under contract on a house. So today we're going to talk about general home inspections, and we're going to start with the outside of the house. So one of the very first things that your inspector is going to do is take a look at the roof. So as you can see behind me, we're at this house here today for our clients. The roof on this home, you can see some exposed shingles, some raised shingles. There's probably some nail pops up there, and we can tell from the inside of the house, due to some staining on the ceiling, that the roof probably has had some leaks in the past. Luckily, loose shingles and exposed nail heads do not always mean a brand new roof. So don't think, oh God, it's going to cost me, $10,000 or $20,000. Sometimes it can just be an easy fix. There may just be a patch job that's needed. And sometimes the gutters being really, really full can be the problem that the roof is having. So a good home inspector is going to look all of this over. So some are going to use binoculars, some are going to actually climb up on the roof and walk around. It just depends on the inspector and how good they are, to be honest. So this particular roof, again, you need to look at the shingles, we need to look at the downspouts and the gutters, and we need to look at the overall condition and how long does the roof have before it needs to be replaced. Knowing if you have 5 years left, knowing if you have 10 years left is really good when you're buying a home because you can plan for that expense later.
Okay, the next thing a home inspector is going to be looking at is the foundation. Do you have a crawl space? Are you on a slab? Do you have a basement? This particular house has a crawl space. You're going to have at least one access to that crawl space. They're going to crawl inside that crawl space. We've even seen some really short crawl spaces where they are literally doing the army crawl in there. They're going to be looking up and down. Down, they're going to be checking for a vapor barrier. That is a thick sheet of plastic that's put down in crawl spaces to help with moisture. Then they're going to be looking up in the crawl space to check for insulation. Is it falling down? Is it non existent? They're going to be looking at the floor joist, all of those types of things. Okay, they're also going to be looking at crawl space vents. So these are the vents that are along your crawl space. Did you know that these open and close? In the summer, especially in North Carolina with the humidity, you want those open because you want the air flowing in your crawl space. The last thing they're going to be looking for are cracking in the foundation. Do you have horizontal or vertical cracks? They're going to look at those cracks and determine, are they normal cracks? Because some are normal, or are they too large? Usually, if they are too large, they are going to recommend that you have a structural engineer come out and do a full assessment and give their take on what's going on.
The next thing that the home inspector is going to check out is the electrical system on the home. The home that we're currently at was built in the 60s, so anything after 1950 has a very different electrical system than a pre-1950s house. That's something to think about when you're looking at the age of the house and trying to decide whether you're going to buy a house or not. So the home inspector is going to look over the panel, they're going to look at the main panel, any sub panels, they're going to check the outlets for ungrounded outlets, electrical outlets, and they're also going to look for wiring problems or things that they consider unsafe in the house. Obviously, with electrical, you can always have the potential for fire hazards. So that's something that's really, really important. Something to keep in mind when you're having your home inspection. A home inspector may say that this particular wiring method is not up to code. So obviously, unless the house was just recently built or the last time the code was updated, it's very common for that to be on your home inspection report. Don't worry about that kind of thing. The house is not going to be up to code electrically or in the plumbing department or probably any portion of the house unless it was just recently done. So don't get scared by something not being up to code.
Okay, next on the list is plumbing. They are going to check out all the plumbing in the house, from fixtures to water heater, dishwasher, toilets. They are going to obviously be checking for leaks at the faucets, leaks under the sink, same with the bathtubs and showers. Another thing they're going to be looking at are what kind of pipes are in the home. Some pipes are better than others. Polybutylene piping was popular in the 70s and 80s. Those have been recalled, so the fittings in those pipes have been known to leak. So if you have those pipes, it's definitely something you want to look into getting replaced before it's too late. They are going to be looking at the water heater. They're going to tell you the age of the water heater. They can look at the model number or serial number and tell you exactly how old it is. They're going to be looking to make sure it has things like this pressure tank, this TPR valve. They're going to make sure it's got this pan underneath, so that way if the water heater does leak, it doesn't ruin your floors. Obviously, the overall safety of the water heater will be looked at as well.
So the home inspector is also going to be checking the doors and the windows, make sure they latch properly, make sure they're functioning, make sure they move up and down. If they tilt in or that's a feature of them, they're going to make sure that that is functioning. And they want to make sure that doors actually latch close and that the mechanisms of the doorknobs work properly. Luckily, the home that we're in today has a newer set of windows, but what you will see a lot of times are a cracked seal. So the seal of the window, once it goes bad, the gas that's in between the panes actually escapes and the window becomes foggy. Unfortunately, this does not get better with time, but sometimes it can just be a pane of glass that also needs to be replaced. So don't necessarily think you have to have brand new windows. It's just the function. The function is fine. It's just the seal itself will make the window not able to be easily seen. So the home inspector is going to go into the attic if it's easily accessible like this. It may have a pull down set of stairs or it may have a scuttle hole that they have to put a ladder into and get inside. What they're looking for up there is obviously to make sure that the rafters and the trusses are in good condition, that there's not been any cut or there's not pieces that are falling apart. They're looking for any type of insect damage or termite damage. And they're also looking for insulation in the attic, making sure that it's properly insulated for the house and the age of it.
Okay, heating and air systems. They are going to check out your heating and air systems. Kind of. And let me explain. They are going to make sure that the heat is heating properly and that the air is cooling properly. Now, that's really all that they do. They can't really open the unit and look into it in depth. They can tell you the age and they can tell you what kind of unit it is. If you really want an in depth look at your heating and air system, it's best to contract a heating and air company to come out and do a separate inspection, and they can really get into the nitty and gritty of what's going on with your unit.
So as you can hear, this dishwasher is running. Something that home inspectors do is they come in and they test the appliances. That means a full cycle running on the dishwasher, make sure it drains properly, make sure that it's actually running, so sometimes they're not running at all. And they're also going to test your stove. So they're going to turn the eyes of the stove on, they're going to turn the oven on, and just make sure that everything is heating properly and turning on. If there was a refrigerator here, this is not an appliance that most home inspectors typically check out. They also don't check out washer dryers. Now, microwaves, if they're built in, that is an appliance they'll turn on, make sure that it actually heats. But if it's an on the counter microwave, don't expect them to inspect that.
Another couple that you can consider doing are well and septic inspections. So, if the home is on a well or a septic system, we can have private companies come out, test the well, test the water, send it off to a lab. Same with the septic. They will come out, they will pump it because it needs to be cleaned out in order to really inspect it, make sure it's not cracked, that all the things are working as it should. And so, those are two that we recommend definitely if you're not on public and city services.
So, a pest inspection is also very heavily suggested. Termites are a big deal. They can do a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. So, having termites and wood boring bees looked at in the house, things that can actually affect the wood on your house, is important. They're going to look for mice and things like that, but that's not as big of a deal as termites. Those affect the foundation of the home.
Another great inspection to do is a separate chimney inspection. So there are actually companies out there that they specialize in fireplaces and chimneys. So they will come out, they will clean the fireplace if it's needed, if it's wood burning, but they will inspect the chimney inside and out, make sure the chimney caps are where they should be to keep water and pests out, all kinds of things. So definitely highly recommend a separate chimney inspection.
And last but not least, if there is a pool on site, you can have a separate pool inspection. It does not matter what time of year it is, even if it's in winter, they can actually inspect these. And it's highly recommended. You don't want to go opening your pool for the summer and find out that you have a cracked liner or a pump problem. That's a bigger expense down the road. So if there's a pool on site, we highly suggest that you get it looked at before you buy the house.
So North Carolina is considered an as is state, which means what you see is what you get. The
Right.
sellers are never required to do any kind of repairs. So don't buy a house going into it thinking, oh, the sellers will take care of everything. Obviously, our jobs are to negotiate and get as much as we possibly can taken care of by the seller, but they're not required to do anything. So definitely keep that in mind.
It's also important to understand that a home inspection is not a pass fail. Most people that are buying a house don't understand that. They'll say, oh, we passed inspection, or are we going to fail that for the inspection? It's not a pass fail. It's just a general report that goes over things that may be of concern to you down the road. So don't think of it as a pass fail. Also understand that it is a human that's doing this. They're touching everything a little bit, so they're not going super in depth on things. And while this is still maybe a $600 to $700 expense, you could get into the house and 3 days later something could break, and the home inspector is really not on the hook for that. They're doing the best they can with the day that they're there, with the condition of the home. So keep that in mind. It's a good idea of what could be wrong with the house, but it's not going to cover everything.
Right.
So that wraps up our home inspection. Can you think of anything else, Michaela?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would love to have you follow us. We put out new content every week.
Yep. We can't wait for you to follow us, and we're going to give you more great home tips.